Previously on the Wrath of Epasamoto.
But while the runners prepared physically, the Bakbari elders were preparing for something far important, the ritual of appeasement. An elder Fonyonga raised his ceremonial blade, the moonlight glinting off its surface. Just as he was about to bring it down, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Everyone froze. The jungle fell silent. Chief Mokake turned sharply. "Who is there?" "Epasamoto does not need all this," he muttered to himself. "He is just a story." Among the athletes was Emmanuel Atangana, a seasoned runner known for his discipline and faith. He adjusted his running shoes, stretching while quietly reciting a prayer. One of the runners, Samuel Ngole, had stopped dead in his tracks, staring wide eyes into the forest. "What is this?" Epasamoto has been angered. "The blood debt must be paid." Epasamoto glowed. "A greater sacrifice is required." Then a discovery was made. In a small hut near the market, an old woman named Mamandongo was found clutching a bundle wrapped in cloth. Her wrinkled hands trembled as the villagers tore the bundle from her grasp. The moment they unwrapped it, gasps ripped through the crowd. It was the remains of a sacrifice, pieces of meat, bones and dried blood hidden away like a dark secret. The people recoiled. "She is the one!" they shouted. Mama Dongo shook her head fiercely. "I did not steal from Epasamoto. I swear it. I found this outside my home. Someone placed it here." But the crowd was beyond reason. Fear had turned them into something ugly, something desperate. "Burn her!" someone yelled. Chief Mokake raised his hand, silencing the madness. "We did not burn our own without proof." He turned to Elder Foyonga. "What must be done?" The old man's eyes were heavy with sorrow. Epasamoto must judge her himself, take her to the mountain. A heavy silence fell. The mountain. No one who went up came back. That night, a procession was formed. Mamandongo was tied with ropes and escorted up Mount Pako, led by Kale, Chief Mokake, and a small group of warriors. The villagers stood at a distance, watching with a mixture of pity and dread. The wind howled as they climbed, the mist swallowing them whole. The higher they went, the more the air thickened with a strange presence, a force that pressed against their chest, whispering in their ears. Then suddenly, they were not alone. The shadows moved, shapes emerged from the mist, twisted, distorted figures with hollow eyes and mouths that stretched unnaturally wild. Kale froze. "The runners," he whispered in horror. The lost athletes of the race stood before them, the bodies half decayed, their eyes black void filled with endless torment. Their warriors clutched their weapons, but there was no use. They were no longer men. They were something else entirely. A deep voice rumbled through the darkness. "You have brought the thief, but she is not the one." Kale turned towards the surface of the voice, his breath catching in his throat. Epasamoto had arrived. His towering figure loomed over them, his red eyes burning like embers in the night. The spirit of the mountain stepped forward, his very presence wrapping reality around him. The trees bent under his power, the air cracked with unseen energy. He looked down at the trembling old woman. She wept. "I did not steal from you. Great Spirit, I swear upon my ancestors." Epasamoto raised a clawed hand. "I see your throat." He rumbled. You are innocent. The group gasped. If she was innocent, then the real thief was still amongst them. Epasamoto turned his burning gaze on the warriors. One of you hides the truth. Fear seethed down Kale's spine. One of them, someone within their group, was responsible for the doom that now loomed over Boya. Mama Dongo was spared, but the nightmare was far from over. Epasamoto's voice echoed through the night. Find the thief, or all shall burn. The wind howled through the trees as the warriors stood frozen in the presence of Epasamoto. His fiery eyes swept over them, piercing through their souls, searching for the one who had betrayed him. Kalengole swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he looked at his fellow warriors, who amongst them had doomed them all. Chief Mokake, his old face lined with sweat, turned to them. If one of you is the thief, step forward now, he commanded, his voice shaking slightly. Epasamoto has spoken. To hide now is to seal our fate. No one is moved. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then a voice broke the stillness. It was not me, but I know who it was. All eyes turned to Ndumbe, one of the young warriors. His eyes darted from face to face before settling on Ekema, a man who had always been known for his greed. Ekema was seen near the offering before the sacrifice. Ndumbe accused stepping forward. I did not think much of it at the time, but now it makes sense. He was always hungry for more that was not his. Ekame recoiled as if struck. This is a lie. He spat. I never touched the offering. You dare accuse me to save yourself, Ndumbe? The tensions thickened. Epasamoto's massive form loomed over them, his gaze shifting between the two men. The spirits of the lost runners mourned in the background, their agony piercing through the night, and then the ground began to tremble. The towering spirit raised a cloud hand, and the wind itself seemed to bend at his will. The trees groaned and the mist thickened. You lie, Epasamoto growled, his voice layered with something ancient and unrelenting. The thief is among you. Before anyone could react, the shadows moved. A force unlike anything they had felt before pulled Ekame off the ground. He screamed, his body twisting in the air as if unseen hands were tearing through his very essence. I swear, it was not me, Ekama wailed. His eyes turned towards Chief Mokake, desperation contouring his face. I am innocent, help me. The old chief did not move. He could do nothing. This was no longer a matter of men. It was between the spirit and the duty. Epasamoto did not hesitate. A deafening roar filled the night, and Ekema's body was engulfed in dark flames. His cries became inhuman, his flesh shriveled and blackened, and his spirit was ripped from his body. The warriors stumbled back, unable to look away as Ekema's form absorbed into the howling mist. And just like that, he was gone. The trembling stopped. The forest felt silent. Epasamoto exhaled, his gaze still burning. His wrath had not been fully satisfied. The curse is not yet lifted, he intoned. The real thief still hides. Find him or all of Boya will suffer. With that final warning, Epasamoto vanished into the mist, leaving the warriors shaking and terrified. They had thought Ekema was the thief, but they had been wrong. And now the true culprit had even more reason to hide. The silence that followed Epasamoto's departure was heavy heavier than the mountain's mist. The warriors stood in a circle, their faces illuminated only by the weak glow of their torches. Hekima was gone, swallowed by the darkness, yet Epasamoto's warning lingered in the air like a curse. Kale's breathing was raged. His heart pounded against his ribs as he cast his gaze over the remaining men. If Ekame had not been the thief, then the true culprit still stood amongst them. Chief Mukake tightened his grip on his staff. His weathered face, usually a pillar of strength, looked more exhausted than ever. No one leaves this mountain until the truth is revealed. The warriors exchanged uneasy glances. The idea of spending another moment on this cursed pit filled them with dread. But no one dared defy the chief, not even what they just witnessed. Dumbe wiped sweat from his brow, his voice unsteady. If the real thief is still here, then he knows we are hunting him. A chilling thought, a man who had dared to steal from Epasamoto himself would not hesitate to do worse to cover his tracks. And then if the mist shifted. The warriors turned sharply as the mist coiled unnaturally, forming eerie shapes before dissolving into the wind. The torches flickered, the flames steaming as if necessarily breathed in the darkness. Then a scream. The group spun around in alarm. Dumbe was gone. The warriors fanned out, searching frantically, their calls swallowed by the oppressive silence. His torch lay abandoned on the damp ground, still burning, but of the man himself there was no trace. Kale swallowed, the bile rising in his throat. Dumbe had been right next to them. How could he just vanish? A deep guttural growl reverberated through the trees. The remaining men huddled together, their fear tangible into the cold night air. "We must move," whispered one of the warriors, his voice barely audible. "Staying here makes us pray." Chief Mukake's lips tightened, but he nodded. "Stay in pairs. Do not let the mist separate you." They pressed forward, deeper into the mountain's shadow. It was fear growing at their every step. As they moved, the whispers began. Soft distant voices, like a thousand tongues murmuring just beyond their reach. The words were instant, but the tone was unmistakable. They were being watched. Kale felt his skin crawl. He turned to his companion, Moki, his oldest friend. "Do you hear that?" Moki's face was pale beneath the flickering light. "It's calling to us." "Who?" But Moki didn't answer. Instead, his eyes glazed over his head, tilting as if listening to something only he could hear. Then, before Kale could react, Moki stepped into the mist. "No! Stop!" Kale lunged for him, but his fingers grasped only air. Moki was gone, swallowed wholly by the fog. Panic gripped Kale's chest. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping his torch. Two men gone within moments. This was no normal mist. The warriors regrouped in a small clearing, their numbers dwindling. Only 5 remained. Chief Mukake gritted his teeth. "This is not Epasamoto. This is something else, something feeding off our fear." Kale nodded, trying to steady his breathing. But Epasamoto's anger is what unleashed. The chief sighed. "Then we must face the truth before more are lost." A long silence stretched between them. Then one of the warriors, Mbela, took a slow step forward. His eyes darted from face to face, his body trembling. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. The mist exploded around him. Dark tendrils lashed out, gripping his body, wrapping around his torso. He let out a struggled cry, his eyes rolling back as he was lifted from the ground. The warriors leaped back in horror as something emerged from the mist. A figure twisted and wrung, with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth that never closed. The thing clutched Mbella like a puppet, its grotesque face stretching into an inhuman grin. And then it spoke. You were so easy to hunt. The grotesque figure holding Bella in its grasp tilted its head, its hollow eyes scanning the remaining warriors. Bella's body convulsed violently, his mouth opening in a silent scream as the nature tightened its grip. Then, without warning, he was dragged into the mist, vanishing into the darkness. Kale could feel his pulse thundering in his ears. Bella was gone. Run! Chief Mokake commanded, his voice shattering the warriors' paralysis. They scattered, pushing through the flickering fog, the torches barely illuminating his path. The whispers in the mist grew louder, more urgent, mocking them, taunting them. Kale ran blindly, his breath coming in short gasps. His mind screamed at him to stop, to gather his breathing, but fear had taken hold. Behind him, the echoes of guttural small ripped through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of bones snapping. Kale didn't stop running until he stumbled into a small clearing. The mist had thinned slightly, revealing Chief Mokake and two other warriors, Tambe and Leke. Their faces were drawn with fear, sweat dripping from their brows. Who did we lose? Mokake asked, panting. Kale shook his head. I don't know. I just heard. He stopped himself, the distant cracking of bones still ringing in his ears. Leke collapsed to the ground, clutching his knees. We were not supposed to die like this, he murmured. We were only supposed to appreciate the race. Mokake tightened the grip on his staff. We must hold our ground. Epasamoto gave us a warning. We need to uncover the truth, otherwise none of us will leave this mountain. Tambe wiped a hand down his face. But how? The real thief is still amongst us. As long silence stretched between them, then a rustling from the trees. They turned sharply, torches raised, the mist parted slightly, revealing a silhouette movement towards them. A figure stumbled out. Ndombe. Kale exulted in relief, but his breath hitched when he saw Ndombe's face. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated. His clothes were torn and his arms before deep scratches. But what was most unsettling was the way he twitched, as if something unseen was still touching him. I saw them, Dumbe whispered, his voice hushed. They are still there. Leke grabbed him. Who? Who is still there? Dumbe's eyes darted around frantically. The ones who come across us, the ones who never left. They are trapped in the mist. He swallowed hard, his lips trembling. They spoke to me, told me the truth. The warriors leaned in closer. Dumbe continued, but Epasamoto's anger has awakened something worse, something that does not care of justice, it only wants blood. Mokake clenched his jaw. Then we must find the thief before this thing devours us all. But even as he said it, chilling realization settled over them. What if the real thief had already been taken? The warriors huddled together, their torches flickering against the relentless mist. They needed a plan. If the entity hunting them was born from Epasamoto's wrath, then uncovering the truth was their only way to end it. We retrace our steps, Mokake decided. We turned to the side of the offering. If there is any sign of who stole from the sacrifice, we will find it there. Tambe hesitated, and if the mist takes us before we get there? Mokake looked towards the sky, barely visible through the thick canopy. Then may our ancestors guide us. With that, they moved as one, torches held high, stepping cautiously through the shifting shadows. The trees groaned under an invisible weight, and with each step, the whispers grew louder. Something was following them. Caleb felt it first, a presence just beyond the edge of his vision. He turned sharply, catching a glimpse of a pair of glowing eyes. Not one, not two, hundreds. Watching, waiting, and then a voice low and terrible spoke from the darkness. You do not belong here. A cold wind swept through the trees and the torches flickered violently. Then the screaming began. It was like an extra volume accompanied the screams. Voices of the many athletes, they screeched in their ears like an old door about to be taken off. The torches did sway around, hoping to lay its beam on a figure, but the voices was like air itself. Every step carried a cry, like they were being cheered to a final doom. Chief Mokake told the few warriors to remain tightly knitted to one another as their pair of bare feet felt the weight of motion against one another. This time around, it was like the cloud above their heads doubled. Even the glimmering stars in the far distance that showed a bit of hope were swallowed. There was a playful scrape around their bodies that tensed the ever-standing hair even tighter to each other. It was like something accompanied them just to the left. Chief Mokake and the left warriors were already close to the sacrificial spot of the gods. We are here, he said. Look around for anything. Tambe had quietly snatched a wrist brace from Kale's hand. He preferred to pin his deep secret on anyone. After all, I won't leave here alive, so let's all die, he whispered to the evil part of his mind. I found this, Tambe yelled. It was the wrist brace. He held it as high as he could. Kale couldn't believe his eyes. This was given to him by his grandmother as a little reward for being obedient. How did it find itself in a crime scene now as a sign of evidence to some sacrilege? This is Kale's. We all know, Tambe added. Chief Mokake turned to Kale with a heavy sigh, hoping for some answers. Kale paused as though he had lost his tongue in the woods. Then after a split silence, he spoke. That is mine, but how did it get to the crime scene? It's been on my wrist all this while, and we are only getting here. I have not been here before, he said, trying to pick his words. Then why do we have your bracelet here covered in mud? Chief Mokake thundered with disappointment. If I was responsible for the stolen items, Epasamoto wouldn't have let me return. At this time, his plea made sense to Chief Mokake. And just as he was about to talk, the dark figure that had haunted the mountain emerged like it zoomed around. It took a final dance around Kale and Tambe. This time, it read their inner hearts, searching for the slightest form of truth like a shark alert to blood. But it wailed no more, for Tambe had 1,000 dirty secrets in him, amongst which stunk the figure was the stolen items of Epasamoto. He was responsible for the items outside the old woman's house. Now he is responsible for the bracelet, all for one reason: to not die alone. With the immense revelation, the figure grew darker and heavier that it flickered off the flashing lights. And as they tried to switch it on again, Tambe was gone. It was just left Ndumbe, Chief Mokake and Kale himself when Epasamoto's voice came rolling down on them. The thief has been taken. Head back to the city. No one should mourn anyone lost here today. Grieving mothers should wipe their tears and shut the doors behind them. Men should drink palm wine like they always do, for I am pleased. The death of everyone was a sacrifice. When evil befalls the land, even the innocent suffer. But now it has come to an end. The thief is devoured. The dark clouds disappeared as the rumbling voice retreated to wherever it came from. The stars began to show off again like cowards coming out from their refuge, and the trees felt normal. Every step back home was a ton of weight falling off their chest. As they reached home, the crowd was still, with a bundle of cry laying down the jaws of mothers. Chief Mokake ordered for no mourning for the athletes or anyone who died as instructed. He asked for their names to be written down in the city's history book, always to be remembered as victims of fate's hands. He revealed Tambe to be the thief, and the fathers cursed and talked. From that day, every man in the city of Boya knew better than defying their very own traditions and customs. Even Ewane, who didn't believe in Epasamoto, was left thinking again. The journalist, out of fear of his life, never published his findings because Epasamoto had made it clear to him: what happens up the mountain stays on the mountain. His findings remain buried in his files like a decayed flesh that never saw light again, and his life was spared.
Please subscribe to watch more of our videos. Thank you.